Friends and neighbors, comrades and friends, welcome to another in the series of Socialism in the Park. 3 presentations on politics, history, and current affairs.
Aim it away from you. On an angle, yeah.
Does that work?
Turn it down a little bit.
Put it in my phone in my bag.
Turn your volume down. Where's the volume?
Okay, this works. Very good. Yeah, well, good evening once again. My name is Barry Weisletter. I'm Federal Secretary of Socialist Action and chair for this evening's presentation on socialism in Canada, an introduction to socialist ideas. Welcome once again. I'm one of the co-editors of Socialist Action newspaper, and hopefully you've picked up a copy, or you will before the end of the evening. We also have some great literature on display under the canopy. And this seems to be the first night in 3 weeks that's not raining, so we're going to celebrate that fact as well. This evening's, the format for this evening will be a presentation of about 40 minutes, followed by some announcements, and you can make announcements about any upcoming events in the community that may be of interest. After that, there will be open time for questions and comments. So we look forward to your participation in this evening's gathering. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, and that is Yasin Kaya. Yasin is an immigrant from Turkey. He is resident in Canada, what, for 10 years?
Almost, yep.
Almost 10 years. He's a PhD candidate in political economy at York University. When he was at York as an undergrad, as a grad student, he was a member of QP Local 3903 and was on the executive of the union that waged a successful strike at York University. I think it was 3 years ago?
Yeah.
He's also the father of a beautiful 3-year-old named Rosa.
And he's the godfather.
And I'm the godfather.
That's
right. So it's all in the family. And Yasin is currently a public service worker, a member of AMAPSIO, which is a public service union, similar to OPSU. He'll tell you what all the initials stand for if he wants. And yeah, he's part of the leadership of Socialist Action. So Yasin is going to speak about socialism in Canada, an introduction to socialism, after which there will be announcements and questions and discussion. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go.
All right, thank you, Barry. I have to press this thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So as Barry said, and as you know, the name of the series is Socialism in the Park, and the title of my presentation is Socialism in Canada, and our objective is socialism in the world. So today I will be focusing on 2 things. First, obviously, socialism in Canada, and I will give some historical background just to open up the discussion, lead off the discussion. And secondly, I will talk about the socialist theory and socialist ways of analyzing the world. So they're big tasks, but I will try to make them as simple as possible so that we can have a productive dialogue after my presentation. So let's start with polling. Please put your hand up if you were here for the first talk. Okay, what about the second talk? All right, I was not here for the first 2, so you're better than I am. But for those who are not here, I will try to summarize the main issues that was discussed in the first one and the second one, and it will be a kind of a refresher for you. So the first presentation was on class and the state. It was almost like a course on biology and history, and here is what I mean. So if you want to study an insect, for example, you need, microscope, and, you cut the insect down, you analyze, and if you have better microscopes, you can even, explore the atoms and the cell structure and then the atoms. So that's how the natural sciences work, right? But we cannot use the microscopes or other devices to analyze society or the state. We need other devices to do so. And Marxist theory, first developed by Karl Marx, provides those toolkits. So by utilizing the Marxist theory and method of analysis, we can understand what the state really is and what the components of the society is. So the scientific analysis of the state and society is best done through using the Marxist analysis. So the first presentation was about that. So when we look around ourselves, we see individuals and we see people, and according to liberal theory, the societies are made of individuals. That's how they analyze the society, right? But according to Marxist understanding of society, classes, social classes make up the society, and there are internal contradictions between social classes in society, and there's a fundamental contradiction between the working class and the business class. So the society is made of social classes which have fundamental conflict between them. So this was the main theme of the first discussion. And secondly, the second week, last week, the course was on history and action. So the first and the biggest workers' state ever was the Russian state, Soviet state. That was established in 1917. In the mainstream analysis, you will read a lot of criticism of Stalinism, mostly focusing on the personality of Stalin. But with using the Marxist tools, you can understand why a workers' state degenerated into a corrupt organization led by bureaucratic cadre. So it was still until it was collapsed. It was still a working class state, but the leadership was as a bureaucratic, corrupt cadre. So how did that happen? So the Marxist analysis provides an analysis of that process, and that was the topic of the second week. And then we provided an alternative to Stalinist Marxism, and we talked about the permanent revolution and transitional program. These are like concepts and methods developed by Leon Trotsky, and we in Socialist Action, we study those theories and we built on them. So, but this week I will start with socialism, a definition of socialism. So what do we mean with socialism? Yes, let's start with that. We mean three things. Socialism is an idea, right? And secondly, it's a political program. And thirdly, with socialism, we mean a socialist movement. So let's start with the idea. So people, even today, have socialist ideas. In fact, one can argue that socialist ideas are dominant in Canadian society. What do we mean with socialist ideas? Like public health care, public parks, enjoying this park without paying any fee, public education. These are all socialist products of the class struggle and products of socialist struggle that were waged in the context of capitalism. And in Canadian society, majority of people do support public health care. Majority of people support public parks. They support public education. So we may conclude that the socialist ideas are still dominant in Canadian society. But socialism is not just an idea. I wish it was as easy as making the idea dominant and end of story. But no, you need a socialist practice and socialist organization. The world is organized according to capitalist principles, and we want the world organized around socialist ideas. So first, socialism is an idea, and secondly, it's a program. By socialism, we mean a program that will take us to the target of a socialist world. So it's a program, a kind of a recipe. With socialism, we mean a recipe, a plan for action that will take us from here, the present stage, to socialism. And there are several interpretations of socialism in the sense of a political program. The program of our party, Socialist Action, is a bit different than the program of Communist Party of Canada, for example. We'll talk about this later on. So with socialism, we mean an idea, socialism as an idea, and a political program. And thirdly, with socialism, we mean a movement that will, around which class struggle will be organized, and through that class struggle, a new society can be established. So I will be talking about these three things: socialism as an idea, socialism as a political program, and socialism as movement. We will be talking about history today, and before that, let me share my assumptions, or Marxist assumptions, with you. These are assumptions, of course, developed with, with analysis of the historical facts. The first thing that we learned from history is that nothing is permanent except change. So change is permanent. Look around yourself. There's movement everywhere, and the same applies to political and social world. Nothing stays the same. This is if you're interested in philosophy, that's the ontology that we support. Change is permanent. That's the first point. It's not only possible; it is a necessity. It's permanent. It takes place, even if we disagree with it. Change happens. And secondly, this is a bit controversial and harder to see. Big changes can happen very fast, sometimes quite suddenly. I repeat, big changes can happen very fast, sometimes quite suddenly. That's what we learn from history. So even in societies that seem relatively stable, these societies might be prone to, in those societies, sudden changes can happen. I'll give you two examples. One, historical, and second, more personal / historical. The historical one. Arguably the biggest revolution in the history of humankind was the Russian Revolution in 1917. But, in 1890, like 20, 30 years before the revolution, Russia was not a very progressive society. And but the working class radicalized in a very relatively shorter period of time. So change came relatively suddenly in Russia. And I'll give you another example. This is an example that I personally experienced and observed in person in Turkey. There was a big revolt in Turkey in 2013, and I was there. Gezi revolt. It started as a small movement that was defending a public park against the government, the municipality that wanted to build a shopping mall there, and it became a nationwide movement revolt that involved millions of people. Yeah, millions of people. So before that happened, people were complaining about the Turkish culture being very submissive, Turkish culture being not, prone to change, or they were very pessimistic people saying like, this society will never change. But once the movement has begun, the change was sudden. Like people that you would never imagine hitting to the streets were leading the movement. People who you would never see in socialist events like this were on the streets fighting against the killer cops, and they were like the bravest segments of the revolt. So this proves the fact that big changes, sudden changes, are possible throughout the history. But we have to get ready for those moments, right? So when the change starts, It would be there won't be any time to, read Karl Marx. There won't be any time to, study the history and learn from the mistakes of the past generations. So we should do our homework now, and when the movements start, we should be ready for it, and we should make interventions, right? Yeah. So yeah, the first point was like change is permanent. Second, the big changes, sudden changes do happen. And don't believe to the pessimists who say, oh, nothing will change, socialism will never come to Canada. History may prove them wrong, and I think this society, which is full of contradictions, will lead into a big movement which will bring a sudden change in Canada. Let's get ready for it. And thirdly, among my friends, I have many friends who say like, I'm not political, I'm not interested in politics. Well, I don't want to bring change, I just do my own stuff. Okay, that's fine. But to those friends, I tell them like, if you do not make history, you become a victim of it. There's no escape from the dynamics of history. So the choice is, do you want to make history or be a victim of it? So actually, there's no third choice. You can't. If you say like I'm not interested, then you accept that the fact that you're a victim of the history. So you're a victim of capitalism. You're a victim of oppression. You're a victim of all the inequalities that are imposed upon you. And if you want to change these conditions, you have to make history by joining to organizations, being active in the movement. That's what I tell to my friends, and I think many of you here share that sentiment. So these are three things that three pillars of our approach to history. Change is permanent, sudden change is possible, and it does happen. And thirdly, in order to not to be a victim of history, you have to make history. All right. So let's start try to answering some common questions raised to socialists. The first question: what is the nature of the present political period? Right. So we cannot talk about theory all the time in abstract manner. Our theory should be linked and intertwined with the present political condition. Let's discuss about what the nature of the present political period is. Now in 2017, the business class, the capitalist class, the bosses, same thing, different words, they're on the offensive. They attack. This was not the case after the Second World War. After the Second World War, in that period, the working class struggle was very strong, and we were, when I say we, I mean the working class, we were getting, gains. We were winning new benefits. There was a wage increase, so on and so forth. But since late 1970s, early 1980s, capitalists started attacking big time on working class, and now they still attack, and the nature of their attack is austerity policies, concessions, cuts, because that's their method of increasing their profits. You see, like I don't want to go into the details of the political economy, but if you look at the profit rates of the big capitalist firms in the United States, in Canada, in Western Europe, they were increasing after the Second World War. Their profits were booming. But after the 70s, the rate of profit started declining. And in order to reverse that, instead of making new investments, capitalists decided to steal the gains of the working class and make profit out of that. So that's not always the case with capitalism. You can increase your profits by investing, making more productive investments, building more factories, and in the future using that productive capacity to profit. But after the 1970s, that was not the path that they followed. The path that they followed was increasing their share in the pie. They basically stole what we have. So we see wage declines in real wage. We still have wage freezes, and they attack benefits all around the world. They attack public services. Here in Canada we have public parks, but in some countries, in Latin America, for example, to go into a park like this, you pay. Maybe if they continue their offensive, and if we, as the working class, lose a struggle, perhaps there will be gates around this park, and you will have to pay. So it all depends on the pace of the struggle. If the offensive increases, and if we can't defend our rights, that will happen. That happened in Turkey. I'm telling you, like the Gezi Park at the heart of the town, a public park for decades. They said, we're building a shopping mall here. They can't say that because there's profit. So that's a possibility in Canada. So that's the nature of the present political period. The business class is on offensive, and the governments are making tax reliefs. They're freezing they're helping the anti-union action of the business class. And in world scale, we see wars everywhere. And the wars, what's the relationship between business class and wars? Well, if you cannot make money out of building very productive factories, you make money out of wars and destruction. That's the nature of the present capitalism. The motor, the engine of the capitalist machinery is destruction now, making profits out of destruction. So these are the things that mark the nature of the present political period today. But what about the labor movement today? So if this is the condition, this is what's happening. What's our response? What's the response of the labor movement today? Well, we should first focus on the labor leadership, right? So and we see a trend of bureaucratization in Canada. That is, the leading cadres of the labor unions and NDP, which is a working class organization, a working class party still, their leading cadre is developing separate interests that are separate from the interests of their membership base. So almost like it's getting like kind of a detached, section in the party or in the labor organization with this separate interest. And in order to realize their interest, they're being they're being submissive or submissive to or supportive of pro-capitalist policies. So, it's not uncommon, unfortunately, today to see that a labor union leader supporting concessions. It's not uncommon, unfortunately. What is a concession? A concession basically means taking, stealing a worker's property away from him and giving it to the boss. And how can a labor organization leader support this? You can't just blame the individuals. We have to understand why this is happening. And we in Socialist Action and many other socialists think that this is a process of bureaucratization. And we in Socialist Action fight against this bureaucratization in two ways. First, we are active in the labor unions. We have a workers' agenda, and we bring forward this workers' agenda, and we challenge the labor bureaucrats. And NDP, NDP is still a working class party. Well, if you study the membership base of the NDP, and even the voters base of the NDP, you will see that it's predominantly working class. With working class, we mean people who live with their wages, like myself. If they take away my wage from me, I will die. I can't survive. That makes me a part of the working class. And so NDP is still a party of the working class. Well, do its policies oriented towards supporting the interests of the working class? I mean, are its policies right? Well, that's a separate question from its. That's a separate question. Well, there are many policies of the NDP which are corrupt, and we in Socialist Action, we don't like most of their policies. So we're in the NDP. not because we find their policy, we find NDP as lesser evil, or for our taste in their policies. We're in there because the workers are there. If the workers were in other organization, if workers were organized in another party, we would be there. Anyway, that's the second way we fight against the labor bureaucracy in the labor movement. The first way is through our work in the labor unions, and secondly through our work in the NDP. Okay.
Well, this thing is really.
I told you, eh?
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a cramp here.
Yeah.
Develop a very strong thumb.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's.
Okay, the previous question. This way? Okay. The previous question that I tried to answer was, what's the response of the labor movement to the business offensive, the business classes attacks on public services, public property, and workers. And we identified the problem as being the labor bureaucracy. Unfortunately, the labor organizations are led by a bureaucratic sect, and we have to fight against them in the NDP, which is a working class party, despite its leadership and policies. And secondly, we have to fight against bureaucracy in the labor unions. And let's talk about the national question a bit. What do we mean with the national question? Well, in Turkey, the heart of the national question is the Kurdish question. In Turkey, there are two foundational elements of the society: Turks and Kurds. The Kurds are the oppressed nation there, and the oppressive state is trying to steal all the rights that the Kurds have, including cultural rights and economic rights. So and that's a foundational problem of the society. Similarly, we have a national question here in Canada, and there are several aspects of this national question. One aspect is definitely the Quebec problem, and secondly, indigenous people and their rights. Let's try to talk about the Quebec problem now. I mean, I don't want to go into the details of history. I don't want this to be a kind of a history lecture. But perhaps you should tell me about your own history. I will have an exam on the history of Canada to get my citizenship. By the way, I have to study for that. Oh God! But probably this is a different history than the one that I will be asked on. So about the Quebec question, I think we can do the long history can be summarized as follows. First, there was the conquest, and then came the attempts of assimilation. There was a response in the rebellion in the 1830s, which failed. And let's fast forward to 1970s. Again, a big nationalist movement, Quebec nationalist movement, which was a big concern for the big capital in Canada. And the response was like some cosmetic changes to the Constitution, and then the Clarity Act in 2000. I know that was a very fast-forward history, but perhaps after my presentation we can go into the details of that. But what about the political organization that embodied the demands of the nationalist movement in Quebec? Well, today there are two forces there, right? There's the bourgeois party, PQ. It's a nationalist party, Quebec Nationalist Party, and it grew on the basis of a very legitimate national struggle, but due to its class nature, bourgeoisie nature, business class nature, it constantly tilts towards to the right. And there's the Quebec Solidaire. It is not a socialist party, we know that, but it's the closest thing in Quebec a working class organization. So I think, and we in Socialist Action think that we have to have solidarity relationships with Quebec Solidaire. So, since the topic of today's presentation is socialism in Canada, and I think that section, that question of Quebec, requires a separate discussion, a lengthy one, and but the political position I think we should support is, working in solidarity with Quebec Solidaire and defending that organization and helping their activities. How much time do I have? I can't keep going.
You got at least another 15.
All right, good. But let's talk about more fun stuff. Let's talk about the how question, my favorite question, because how can we bring a radical change to the society? There are many people, there's so many people who like the system that we live in, but there's so many others who really dislike the system that we live in. And believe me, the number of the people who are dissatisfied with the system is increasing. And I will give you a kind of a small sample, an example that is based on a small sample. That's Socialist Action. Our membership base doubled in the last 2-3 years. So why? Because people are getting more and more angry with it. More and more people are getting angry with the system, and with the system, I mean the economic system, the political system. But I think the more important question is the how. Okay, we don't like the system, but and we want a better society where people have enough access to resources, where people live in harmony with nature, and where people, have a just society and an egalitarian society. So we don't like the system that we live in. We know where we want to go to. We know what the future state should look like. But how are we going to go there? Of course, changes in ideas won't take us there. We can't just close our eyes and dream and build a socialist society here. Well, we can try, but it will be just a fun exercise. And we can't just say like, okay, guys, let's go to the Bloor Street or let's go to Queen's Park, take over the Parliament. For 15 minutes, half an hour, that will be fun. But in an hour, the cops will come and probably they will arrest us. So that's not the greatest strategy either. So we need a better strategy. So what should be the strategy? I think in this third talk in the series, we should together talk about that how question, how to bring radical change into in society, capitalist society. So I'm just flagging this so that in the discussion period we can talk about the how question. Many people also ask like, okay, but Socialist Action is just one of the left organizations. There's so many, like you guys are all divided. Why don't you guys just get together and build a big left party instead of having 12 separate organizations? Okay, that's a valid question. But is it a good idea? They're separate organizations for a reason. First reason is like there are differences in terms of the political orientation. Not every organization is trying the same method of bringing a radical change to society. That's the first difference. And secondly, these splits were a product of a history. Throughout the history, different organizations or people, groups, gave different answers to historical developments. After the Cold War, when the Soviet Union, when the Stalinism took over, not as an ideology, and when the bureaucracy in Soviet Union followed a very corrupt path. The response of the socialist organizations had been diverse. One group of people said, "Oh, you know what? Soviet Union is not a working class state. It's not no longer a worker state anymore. You know, it's just a corrupt, a corrupt capitalist state. So just like the United States, the Soviet Union is a capitalist state. So we should just take a third position. We should be against the capitalism, and we should be against the Soviet Union type communism, and we should be challenging that we should have a third position." This was one group of thought and response to a very historical fact. That was not the position of the majority of the socialists. The majority said, yeah, the leadership is corrupt, but it's still the Soviet Union is still a worker state. We have to challenge the leadership, but we have to protect Soviet Union against the imperialist attacks of the American imperialism, British imperialism, and you name it. So that was one reason of difference. And even during the Vietnam War, about Maoism, the situation in China, and various other events, different organizations gave different responses, and all these responses led to splits. And some of these organizations just died. Some of them changed their names. So, we cannot simply say, okay, we're forgetting about the past and we're building a left organization right now. It won't work. I'm telling you. I mean, people have tried that. And I keep giving examples from the Turkish society, Turkish political scenes. But I will give another one. And Sema is here. She can talk more about her experiences. So in the early 1990s, leftists got rid of they got frustrated and said, okay, we will bring all the left parties together under Freedom and Democracy Party, and they formed this giant left party, that kind of an umbrella organization, and it failed big time. Why? First of all, it was not an organization that was built on the basis of unity in action. It attempted to, harmonize the different organizations, which had really clear historical divides. So against that idea, merging all the left organizations under an umbrella organization, we think, okay, let's not waste our time with, on that needless effort of merging all this organization, but let's unite in action. The labor unions are, under attack. They're being forced into collective agreements that bring concessions. Why don't we bring all the left organizations around a no concessions platform? Why don't we bring all the organizations together against, I don't know, you name it, against imperialist wars? So instead of organizational unity, why don't we bring the different segments of the left together around a practical action, like Venezuela? Like there's a right-wing coup d'etat against Venezuela. The country is being attacked by the imperialists, and Canadian state is a part of that assault. Why don't we defend Venezuela here in Toronto, in Canada, and why don't we invite all the left organizations around that goal? So that's the trajectory that we support. Since my time is very limited, I will end my remarks, but with a few questions.
All right. Okay.
Okay, we can talk about social. I mean, I already told you about socialist action. Okay, here are my questions. First, I talked about the working class organization and the labor unions and NDP as a political organization of the working class here in Canada, but we did not talk about the oppressed groups, including women, the youth, LGBTQ people. So my first question to the group then is how the labor movement here in Canada can support the struggle of the oppressed people, and what's the role the socialists should play in that struggle. So the relationship between the oppressed groups and labor unions is my first question to the group. And secondly, although the title of the presentation was Socialism in Canada, we should be clear that socialism in one country is not possible. Well, how do I know that? Well, history says so. That's what what Stalin thought it would be possible. He thought, and they thought, that corrupt leadership thought, we don't need to internationalize the communist or socialist struggle. We should just protect our socialism within our borders. And that idea, mind you, got supporters from other countries. And building socialism in one single country was a strategy that many people developed. So when we say socialism in Canada, then that question is internally tied to the question of socialism in the world. Socialism in Canada is not possible without socialism in the world. But currently, the political situation in the world is marked by imperialist wars. So my second question to the group is, how can we build an internationalist movement which is necessary to defeat the imperialist attacks? So I will stop here. I already talked 45 minutes and I don't have enough thumbs to relax. So how do you want to do this? Do you want me to circulate this around, or?
Usually people just get up and they'll ask, but
Okay.
Barry should be chairing at this point. So
Okay, thank you all.